What's your name?
Ruby. I'm Ruby.
Isn't a sweet thing like you worry about getting hurt? There's a lot of bad boys out there.
Mm-hmm. I know. But I got eyes in the back of my head.
And cut! Excellent cut! That's a friend. Fire them for the footage.
I mean, probably not, right? Wait, what the hell was this movie? Why did they create Nighthawks on the set? I just threw it in for jazz. Okay, I watched it so you don't have to. It sucks. Nighthawks, Nighthawks. It's my favorite painting. It's my desktop background. Really a vibe at night in New York. The Simpsons ate here. But I've always wondered... No, I haven't always wondered. What actually happened was, while browsing the worst place on the worst website, this post caught my attention and I thought it was a fun idea. I actually have a lot of unanswered questions about the Nighthawks building, and not just if the whole roof could be supported by one measly pole. Like, for one, where's the entrance? How do you get in? This is a door, but it's almost certainly an interior service door, not a street entrance. I mean, if this is supposed to be a diner, it's probably not part of a much larger building that's behind this wall, so from the street, how do you get in? Is it off screen? Diner doesn't look that big, though. This painting is currently in the Art Institute of Chicago, and on the website's placard, didactic text, they say that the missing entrance was intentional as part of the tightly organized composition, which is spare in details. Sure, that's exactly what somebody who forgot to paint an entrance would say. Nighthawks, Nighthawks. No way inside Hawks. Why is this my favorite painting? Hopper is a tour de force. His body of work triggers memories living in the quiet moments of the present. In an American life I remember more than I actually lived. Nighthawks takes this concept and fuses it with razor-sharp perspective lines and enchanting colors that have inspired countless references and parodies, including this Banksy piece. That's why Nighthawks is my favorite painting. But I'd say this is my favorite Edward Hopper painting, if that makes any sense. So, would it work? Columns need to hold up to both compressive and buckling stress. I studied physics, not something useful like architecture or engineering, but even I know steel is incredibly strong. My instinct is that we can take super conservative estimates and it'll still work. Given the perspective of this painting, this pole appears about equidistant from us as this guy, if not even further away. This is like 3/4 of his head, which would be around 5 inches, but just to prove a point, let's assume it's only 3 inches, which also happens to be the smallest standard size for a circular HSS tube steel column, according to this gorgeous looking website, dimensions.com. By the way, I just found this site on Google, but it looks really nice. What else is on this website? Humans? What the? Bending? A page for a human's bending, with diagrams and descriptions and presumably 3D model files. Bending is a fundamental human movement where the body is flexed at one or more... Yeah, I've read enough. What else you got? Pop culture? Con? Like from Star Trek? Yeah, from Star Trek. This is sick. What were we doing again? Oh yeah. What about the roof? Build Studios recreated Nighthawks as a 3D model, taking care to reproduce the exact dimensions required for the view in the painting, which revealed some new information about the diner. Most relevant to us is that the diner isn't actually wedge-shaped, as most people assume, but more like a square. It's almost 90 degrees. Though I'm not sure if I agree with this analysis. It feels like when people mapped out the Seinfeld apartment and hallway to prove it can't literally mathematically exist. If I wanted to know what the diner's shape actually is in a meaningful way, I think this is more faithfully answered by Hopper's original intention, and more practically answered by how it looks to you and I. It might be the case that to achieve this exact view in real life, it would need to be the square shape. But I still see a wedge on first glance, and I think that's what Hopper meant to do. By the way, where's the door, guys? But you know what? Let's assume it's 90 degrees, which would be heavier, again to prove a point. So to calculate compression, assuming that, you know what, you don't care about this. You're not going to check my math. You might check for a comment checking for my math, but you're not going to check my math. In both buckling and compression, the measly 3-inch hollow steel pole carrying a massive rectangular roof and including the allowance of snow, a real consideration for flat roofs in New York City, easily clears the yield requirements. I think. I don't really know if this is how you're supposed to do it. But I don't think it would pass New York City building codes. Section 1006.2.1 requires at least 2 exits for an unsprinklered restaurant if the occupant load is greater than 74, which we just managed to clear with our big area estimate earlier. But even if it isn't that big, there's not 1 exit, there's 0. Nighthawks, Nighthawks. Hazard to your life, Hawks. Okay, so maybe you don't trust my math, because I don't, and it's probably wrong. There's another angle we can take to try to answer this. Nighthawks is famously inspired by a restaurant on Greenwich Avenue where 2 streets meet. It's also famously been really difficult to track down the original diner, since Hopper, in his own words, simplified the scene a great deal and made the restaurant bigger, though that hasn't stopped people from trying to find the original. This blogger hypothesizes that it was likely inspired by the building that's now occupied by a business called the West Village Forest, Hey, why don't we go there? Maybe it'll give us some ideas about if the building could actually exist in real life. Nighthawks, Nighthawks. Now in real life, Hawks.
7E.
Okay, we're about approaching the flower shop. It looks really Nighthawksy, even from here. It's got that sharp angle. Wow. Huh. I mean, it's got way more structure than the painting. You can see why it is not collapsing. This is what the inside is like. Nice plants. So I spoke to the guy inside and asked if he knew about the Nighthawks thing, and he said a lot of people actually come in to tell him that. He said that some people think it's the real inspiration for the painting, but also a lot of people think that it's actually based on a place called Jeju Noodle Bar, which is just a couple blocks away, so we're heading there now. I am so excited to see what this looks like. So at first glance, I'm not impressed. It doesn't really look like Nighthawks. Hey, at least there's doors on the right side. At least there's the pole, but it's on the outside. This has been kind of a bust. Maybe I should just go home. Wait, what's that? This needs some explanation. So before Jeju Noodle Bar moved in, this place was a diner that used to be called Nighthawks. Before that, it was called Classics Cafe. The owner changed the name in 2014 after a patron came in saying that it was likely the one that inspired the painting, and I guess Jeju Noodle Bar never removed the text. The New Yorker says most of their evidence was based on the visual similarity between the restaurant and the one shown in the painting, but I don't really see it. The article also points out that the most accepted location is Mulberry Square, a small triangular lot on Greenwich Avenue, and hey, doesn't that look familiar? However, Jeremiah Moss, a blogger that investigated possible locations for the painting, looked into Mulberry Square and found that a gas station, not a diner, was in this exact area at the time that Hopper created the painting. So, was this the original Nighthawks? I don't know, but it doesn't really look like it. And it certainly doesn't help us answer our question, seeing how much thicker the supports are here. When I was trying to get home, walking around Greenwich Village, I started to see a lot of places that look like they could have inspired Nighthawks. Almost everywhere you look, you'll see a vaguely triangular glass-walled building. Like, look at this coffee shop. In terms of how much of it is glass, it looks more like the painting than either of the places we looked at earlier. I'm surprised it's structurally stable, though I guess the doorway helps. So I asked the barista inside there if she's ever heard of the Nighthawks thing. And she doesn't even know what Nighthawks is. So I told her it was a famous painting, and she was like, oh, show me. So I showed her a picture, and she was like, wow, that's beautiful. But no, nobody's ever mentioned that. And then she said, what was the painting called again? Nighthawks, Nighthawks. Not in real life, Hawks. But it's alright, Hawks. Because these buskers are tight. Hawks. I started going around and asking a lot of people if they thought their building inspired the painting, and pretty much all of them were busts. Could this be Nighthawks? Maybe this one could be Nighthawks. That has to be the worst restaurant name of all time. Even the Easy plant looks like Nighthawks. The Easy plant. Is this Nighthawks? Nah, it doesn't really look like it. This one has a crazy triangular shape. What are those? Are these like... The walls are all pink. What does the store even sell? Oh hey, it's Sarong. And this is not Keanu. I'm getting kind of sick of bothering random people and also getting weird looks from the other customers, so I think it's about time to call it. Ooh, sorry, I've just been handed a note. My lawyer says I can't use this song in a video. I thought it would be a perfect fit for this moment though, so just imagine Kermit the Frog singing, New York, I love you, but you're bringing me down. And then there's this sick Miles Davis solo that's timed perfectly and in the same key just by starting the videos at a specific time. Instead, here's some music from my friend Solomon. By the way, I checked the channel for this video out of curiosity, and oh my god. First the building and now this? I'm starting to get creeped out. Let's hurry up and move on. So what did we learn from that little excursion? One that there probably isn't a specific building, but rather a lot of wedge-shaped corner cafes and restaurants with huge windows that Hopper based his painting on, and also that most of these buildings seem to have a lot more stability than the one in the painting. But I think that brings us to the more pertinent point of the building's design. In this New Yorker piece, Carter Foster, the curator of drawing for the Whitney, calls Edward Hopper a realist. But explains his real process was about memory, the way it infused his subjectivity, and how he focused on the material memory of the city. If you are the nostalgic sort, you might long for Hopper's paintings to represent reality, and for that reality to exist on the streets of the city. You might want to find an actual diner, for example, where the faded imprints of the Nighthawks' elbows can still be observed in the Formica countertop, or at least know the hollowed ground on which the diner once stood, if only to have a place for pilgrimage, a place to point at and say, there it was. That's not what Hopper's giving them. He's giving so much more. Maybe people don't want the art, they want the thing. But the painting is the thing. I don't need to find a diner. What's better is to understand how the artist's mind worked. Way to be a killjoy, Foster. Pilgrimages are fun. But I have to admit, it might even be the case that this pole could not literally support this roof in real life. But why does it matter if it is structurally sound in the painting? This is not letting him get away with it. It's basic suspension of disbelief. It's why I don't really like the CinemaSins school of dissecting movies by their adherence to reality. People get hung up over stupid questions in a movie that should have forewent logical consistency the moment you bought the ticket. Why didn't the sorcerer use his magic portals to cut off the purple guy's hand holding the super gem glove? You want to talk about urban alienation and loneliness? Try only discussing movies this way with your friends and see who wants to stay your friend. Our modern attitude towards our content has never been more pessimistic. You can hear it in the words we use to describe it. We'll say we're doom scrolling, first through clickbait, then it became slop, and now we just call it literal brain rot. But we should at least give our media this pass. I did a video once on teleological thinking, and in the same way I think we should be wary of purpose-driven thinking in our day-to-day lives, I think we should also avoid imposing too much reality and cause-based thinking in our art. You've likely heard Polish philosopher Korzybski famously proclaim that the map is not the territory. All models are wrong. And, of course, this is not a pipe. Magritte, this painting is sheet. Wait, was that what they were trying to say with this? Probably not. We don't need to wax poetic on the distinction between reality and its representations, but let's just acknowledge that it exists.
What's your name?
So, this is not a building. It's a tool for feeling something new. It's beautiful, confusing, it hints at stories in the human and the material just out of our reach. The building, or the representation of one, was created for us, and not for them. In the end, my opinion is no more perfectly captured than in the top reply of the post that triggered this video. Ultimately, if the building in Nighthawks isn't structurally sound, then why isn't it falling over? Jackass.